Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are looking at a figure who didn't just play a sport. She effectively completed it. We are talking about someone who set a standard of dominance that is, frankly, statistically terrifying.
It really is. We often use words like legend or icon pretty loosely in sports, but when you look at the numbers we have in front of us today, you realize we're dealing with a complete statistical anomaly.
We are talking, of course, about Steffi Graf. But I want to push back a little on that dominance label right at the start, just to play devil's advocate.
Okay.
We see dominance all the time now. We see Serena Williams, we see Djokovic, we saw Federer. What makes this specific brand of dominance Steffi Graf had in the late 80s so statistically different from, say, Djokovic holding all four majors at once?
That's a really fair question. It's easy to get numb to the numbers, especially with the big three and men's tennis constantly rewriting the books. But the differentiator for Graf, specifically if we look at 1988, isn't just the wins, it's the compression.
The compression.
Yes. Djokovic held all four, sure, but not in a single calendar year. Steffi achieved the Golden Slam.
Which is still the holy grail of tennis.
It is the absolute summit, winning the Australian Open, the French Open, Wimbledon, and the US Open, plus the Olympic gold medal.
All in the same calendar year.
All in one 12-month stretch.
So it's the lack of a reset button. You don't get to go into the off-season and regroup.
Precisely. You have to sustain peak performance from the heat of Melbourne in January all the way to the humidity of New York in September without a single mental lapse in a major match. And then you have to layer in the Olympic pressure.
Which is a whole different kind of pressure.
It's a once-in-4 years event. If you choke there, you don't get a next year. The window closes.
And just to set the stakes for everyone listening, no other tennis player, male or female, has ever achieved this. It stands completely alone.
And then there's the rankings. She was world #1 for a record 377 weeks in total.
That's what, over 7 years of being the best player on the planet? Yeah.
It is. And 186 of those weeks were consecutive. That record stood for decades until Serena came along and tied it.
So our mission today is to really unpack the machine behind these numbers.
Yeah.
How did this shy girl from Mannheim, West Germany, become forehand?
Right.
How did she navigate these incredible personal scandals? And we will get into the tax evasion and the prison sentences and these intense rivalries to leave a legacy that really hasn't been touched since.
It's a story about incredible discipline, biomechanics that were ahead of their time, and a mental fortitude that I think goes massively underappreciated.
Let's go back to the beginning, because with athletes of this caliber, you always assume they were just born with a racket in their hand. And in Steffi's case, it's barely an exaggeration.
It really isn't. She was born in Mannheim in 1969. Her father, Peter Graf, was an aspiring tennis coach. And the family story, is that he taught her to swing a wooden racket in their living room when she was just 3 years old.
3. Most kids are struggling with, basic motor skills, learning not to eat crayons.
And she's learning swing mechanics. By 4, she's on a court practicing. By 5, she's playing her first tournament.
Like a classic prodigy timeline.
Absolutely. She won the European Championships for both the 12s and the 18s in 1982. She was just skyrocketing.
But we need to pause on this prodigy aspect because in the context of 1980s women's tennis, that word usually signaled a very specific and often very tragic trajectory.
Oh, yes. The burnout phase.
Exactly.
You have to understand the landscape back then.
Right.
The WTA tour in the early 80s was a meat grinder for teenage girls. I mean, you had Andre Agassi, you had Tracy Austin, these incredible phenoms who were basically burned out and broken by the time they were 20.
Right.
The standard operating procedure was, if the kid can hold a racket and hit the ball over the net, you put them in every single tournament you can to cash in.
Milk the asset before the injuries pile up.
That's it, exactly. And Peter Graf, her father, he looked at that landscape and said 9. He did the math. He implemented a strategy that was considered heresy at the time.
Which was?
He strictly controlled her schedule.
We have a comparison here in our notes that's really telling. In 1985, leading up to the US Open, you had another huge rising star, Gabriela Sabatini.
Right. Sabatini was the it girl of the moment in many ways, a huge talent. And she played 21 events in that lead up. She was grinding.
21. And Steffi?
10. Less than half.
Wow.
It drove the sponsors crazy. It drove the press crazy. They called Peter Graf controlling. They called him paranoid. But he was building an engine for the long haul.
He wasn't trying to win the 1985 season.
No. He was trying to win the 1995 season.
Which is such a fascinating insight into delayed gratification. But this control wasn't just about preserving her knees, was it? It was also about social isolation.
Yes, that's a huge part of it. Peter Graf kept a very, very tight rein on her personal life. Social invitations were almost always declined. There were no slumber parties. It was just practice and match play.
Which totally explains her reputation on tour, right? She was known as being incredibly shy, almost reclusive.
Exactly. I mean, she was naturally reserved, but that isolation was also manufactured by her team to keep her focused. She would typically practice for up to 4 hours a day. Sometimes she'd go straight from the airport to the practice courts.
It doesn't leave much room for making friends in the locker room.
Not at all. It creates this image of a kind of tennis robot, almost. But you can't argue with the results.
No, you can't. Which brings us to 1987. This feels like the turning point, the moment the apprentice, becomes the master.
1987 was the breakthrough year. You have to remember, before this, the women's game was completely owned by Martina Navratilova and Chris Evert.
The duopoly.
Yes. They had been trading the #1 spot back and forth for a decade. They were the establishment.
And Graf had been knocking on the door.
She had been. But at the 1987 French Open, she kicked the door down. She defeated Navratilova, who was the reigning world #1, in the final. It went 8-6 in the third set.
A nail-biter.
That is a passing of the torch moment, if I've ever seen one.
And she didn't look back after that, did she?
Not for a second. On August 17th, 1987, she officially overtook Navratilova for the world #1 ranking, and she simply refused to give it back.
And that kicked off that streak we mentioned earlier.
186 consecutive weeks at the top.
Which takes us right into 1988, the golden year. I want to spend some real time here because the Golden Slam is just such a ridiculous concept. It's almost mythical.
It is the pinnacle. Only 2 other women had ever done a calendar slam before her. That's winning all 4 majors in a year. Maureen Connolly Brinker and Margaret Court. But Graf added the Olympic gold medal in Seoul to the mix.
Okay, but there is a specific technical detail about this that I think makes Graf slams significantly harder than those previous ones.
Well, yes.
It comes down to the dirt they were standing on.
That is the key context. It's absolutely crucial. When Connolly and Court won their slams, 3 of the 4 majors were played on grass.
So the U.S. Open and the Australian Open used to be grass tournaments.
Correct. So you really only had to master 2 surfaces, grass and the clay of the French Open.
But by 1988, the tour had modernized.
Right. You had the Australian Open on rebound ace, a type of hard court. You had the French Open on red clay. You had Wimbledon on grass. And you had the U.S. Open on decoturf, a different kind of hard court.
So she had to master 3 completely different surfaces with different bounce heights, different speeds, all in one season.
Precisely. Clay is slow and high bouncing. Grass is fast and keeps the ball skidding low. Hard courts are somewhere in between. To dominate on all 3 in a span of just a few months requires a versatility that is almost impossible to maintain.
You have to change your movement, your timing, your whole tactical approach for each one.
You do, and she didn't just win these matches, she annihilated people. We have to talk about the 1988 French Open final.
The double bagel.
The double bagel.
It sounds delicious, but if you're Natasha Zvereva, it was an absolute nightmare.
It was one of the most brutal, one-sided displays in the history of sports. Graf won 6-0, 6-0.
I want to drill down on the timeline of this match because it is startling.
Officially, the duration of the match was 34 minutes. But because there was a short rain break, the actual time they were playing was only 32 minutes.
32 minutes. I take longer than that to order lunch some days.
Wait.
Zvereva won 13 points total in a Grand Slam final.
It remains the shortest Grand Slam final ever played. It was a statement. It wasn't just about winning. It was about total and utter destruction. And you have to remember, Zvereva had actually beaten Navratilova to get to that final.
So she wasn't a nobody.
She was a top player. Graf just operated on a different plane of reality that day.
And then she goes to Wimbledon, wins that, goes to the U.S. Open, wins that, and finally she caps it all off at the Seoul Olympics,
where she defeated her rival, Gabriela Sabatini, to win the gold. And, just to show off a little bit, she also won the Wimbledon doubles title that year.
Partnering with who?
Partnering with Sabatini.
It was just showing off at that point, really.
It really is.
Okay, so we've established that she won. Now I want to understand how. What was she doing on the court that made her so untouchable? And she had that nickname that gives us a pretty big clue.
Fräulein Forehand.
Right. Let's get under the hood of this shot. You mentioned earlier it was an inside-out forehand. Now, to the casual listener or someone like me who just plays park tennis, that sounds inefficient. If the ball's on your left side, why not just hit a backhand?
It's all about geometry and physics. A backhand, biomechanically, is usually a defensive or a neutral shot. You're reaching across your body. But a forehand, that's your power. That's the full kinetic chain of your hips and your shoulder working together.
So she's sacrificing court position for more power.
Massive amounts of power. She would run all the way around the ball to hit a forehand from her backhand corner. She used a semi-Western grip, and the really interesting part is that she hit the ball remarkably late.
And late usually means bad in tennis, right?
Usually, yes. If you're late, you shank it into the stands. But Graf had this incredible whip-like snap. She would let the ball get deep into her strike zone, almost behind her hip, and then boom, uncoil.
And what did that do?
By hitting it late, she disguised the direction. The opponent couldn't read if she was going cross-court or down the line until the ball was already past them.
But here's the problem I see with that strategy, the run around the backhand strategy. If I'm standing way over in the doubles alley to hit a forehand, I've left 80% of the court wide open.
And that's the trap. That's what everyone thought. Opponents saw the open court. They'd think, aha, I've got her. I'll just hit it into that massive open space. But Graf was arguably the fastest sprinter the WTA has ever seen. She had incredible, intricate footwork. She would bait them into hitting that shot, sprint across the court, and because she was now moving into the ball, she generated even more pace on her reply.
That's just demoralizing.
Utterly. You do exactly the right tactical thing. You hit the ball to the open court, and she hits a screaming winner past you.
So she was faster than everyone else, and she had a bigger hammer than everyone else. But we can't ignore the other side, the backhand. For a long time, people saw her backhand as a weakness because she almost exclusively used a slice.
Not the slice. That chopping motion. Yeah, in the modern game, we see a lot of two-handed topspin drives. But from the early 90s onward, Graf started using the slice almost exclusively from the baseline. She even admitted later in her career she wished she'd developed a two-handed drive backhand.
But she turned that limitation into a weapon.
She absolutely did. Because she hit it so low, the ball would just skid off the court. Imagine you're playing her on grass at Wimbledon. The ball hits the grass and just dies. It doesn't bounce up. So her slice would hit the turf and skid through at, like, ankle height.
So as the opponent, you have to bend your knees, really dig the ball up.
Exactly. You have to lift it. And usually when you have to lift a low ball like that, you can't generate much pace. You float a weak shot back. And who is waiting on the other side of the net for that weak floating shot?
Fräulein forehand.
Fräulein forehand is waiting to crush it. It was a perfect tactical setup. The slice frustrated opponents, it kept the ball out of their strike zone, and it bought her time to position herself for the cannon.
It's amazing that despite that slice being so naturally suited for grass, she managed to win on everything.
She is the only player, male or female, to win each major at least 4 times. Just think about that distribution for a second.
That's wild.
She wasn't a clay court specialist or a grass court specialist. She was an everything specialist.
No.
Which is funny because she said her favorite surface was grass and her least favorite was clay.
Even though she won the French Open 6 times.
6 times. It just goes to show the massive gap between her least favorite level and everyone else's absolute best.
Okay, so we have the dominance, we have the style of play, but no great sports story is without conflict. And the early 90s brought a massive, massive shift in the narrative.
Yes, the Monica Seles era.
By 1991, Graf wasn't the undisputed queen anymore.
No, not at all. Monica Seles arrived like a hurricane. She was completely different. She had a double-fisted backhand and a double-fisted forehand. She grunted loudly. She hit with immense power from both sides, and she took the ball incredibly early, right on the rise.
So she cut off all the angles that Graf used to rely on.
She did. She took time away from Graf. And by 1991, 1992, Seles had taken the world #1 spot. She was the dominant player.
It really looked like the guard was changing permanently.
It was a genuine, fierce rivalry. Seles was dominant. She won the Australian, French, and U.S. Opens in 1991. Graf was struggling with her form. She had some injuries.
And then came April 1993, Hamburg, Germany.
This is one of the darkest, most awful moments in sports history. Seles was playing a match against Magdalena Maliva. During a changeover, a man ran out of the stands and stabbed her between the shoulder blades with a knife.
And we need to be very clear, this wasn't some random act of violence.
No. The attacker was a mentally ill fan of Steffi Graf. He explicitly told police he did it to help Graf reclaim the #1 ranking. He wanted to eliminate the rival.
That is just chilling. And the consequences were immediate and catastrophic for Seles' career.
Seles was out of the game for over 2 years. The physical wound, the actual stab wound, healed relatively quickly. But the psychological trauma, being attacked in your workplace, essentially, was immense and long-lasting.
And in her absence.
In her absence, Graf returned to dominance. She won 65 of her next 67 matches. She took back the #1 ranking. She won the next 3 majors she played.
Now, this brings us to what might be the most uncomfortable moment in tennis history. The stabbing itself is the tragedy, but what happened next in the boardroom is arguably just as brutal in its own way.
You're talking about the WTA player vote.
The vote. This sounds like a plot from a TV show, not real life. Walk us through this meeting.
So the WTA has to decide, what do we do about Monica's ranking? Do we freeze her #1 ranking while she heals?
Which seems like the compassionate and obvious thing to do.
You'd think so. She didn't lose the ranking on the court. She was stabbed by a spectator. But the decision was put to a vote among the players themselves.
That is a massive conflict of interest, isn't it? If I vote to freeze her ranking at #1, that means I can't become #1.
Exactly. It's a zero-sum game. If Seles stays at #1, everyone else is fighting for the scraps below her. So they held a vote. And 17 of the top 25 players voted against protecting her ranking.
They voted to let her ranking drop to 0.
It was cold-blooded. It was business. And it worked for them. Seles vanished from the rankings, and every single player moved up a spot, which meant more prize money, better seeds in tournaments, easier draws.
And where was Steffi in all this?
Graf was absent from the meeting, so she didn't cast a vote. But she was, without question, the primary beneficiary of the decision. And that cast a long shadow over her reign in the mid-90s.
The asterisk.
There was always this whisper in the crowd, this unspoken question, are you winning because you're the best? Or are you winning because the best is sitting at home with PTSD?
It really is the great what-if of tennis history. If Monica Seles hadn't been stabbed, does Steffi Graf reach 22 majors?
It's highly unlikely. Seles was on a trajectory to win many of those. But, and this is a crucial point, you also have to credit Graf's incredible ability to keep performing amidst that chaos. She didn't ask for the attack. She was horrified by it. She visited Seles in the hospital. But at the end of the day, she had to go back to work.
And it wasn't just the Seles situation hanging over her. Graf had her own chaos happening at home. We mentioned her father, Peter, controlled everything.
He controlled the finances, too. And as it turned out, not very legally. In 1995, the German authorities accused Steffi of massive tax evasion on her early career earnings.
But it was her father who was managing all the money.
Exactly. Steffi maintained she had no idea what was happening. Her job was to play tennis. His job was to handle the checks. But the pressure was on her. She was being interrogated by police. And in August of 1995, her father was arrested.
We went to prison.
He was eventually sentenced to 45 months in jail for tax evasion.
Just try to imagine the mental state you have to be in. Your father, your coach, the man who built your entire career is sitting in a prison cell. You are being investigated by your own government. The media is camped on your lawn. And you still have to go play Wimbledon.
And this is where Graf's resilience is just mind-boggling. In 1995, right in the thick of this personal nightmare, she won the French Open, she won Wimbledon, and she won the U.S. Open.
That is insane.
She was undefeated at the Grand Slam she played that year. She beat Arantxa Sanchez Vicario in 2 of those finals, and Monica Seles, who had just made her emotional return to the sport in the U.S. Open final.
We have to talk about that rivalry with Arantxa Sanchez Vicario.
Yeah.
Because if Seles was the power hitter, Sanchez Vicario was the ultimate retriever. The backboard.
The Barcelona bumblebee, she just ran everything down. She made you play one more ball, then one more, then more until you finally made a mistake. The 1995 Wimbledon final between them is legendary.
There was one specific game in that match that people still talk about to this day.
Oh, yeah. The third set. It's 5-5. Sanchez Vicario is serving. It's the pivotal moment of the entire match. And that single game lasted for 16 minutes.
16 minutes for one game of tennis.
It had 13 deuces. It was just an absolute war of attrition. Graf eventually broke her serve and went on to win the title. But wait, there's more.
Of course there is.
The 1996 French Open final, again against Sanchez Vicario.
I got the long one.
It was the longest French Open women's final in history, 3 hours and 3 minutes, and Graf won the third and final set 10-8.
10-8 in the third. She just refused to lose.
And you have to remember, she's doing all of this while her back is falling apart and her father is in legal trouble. It's a level of compartmentalization that is hard to even fathom. It's almost dissociative. She steps on the court, and the rest of the world just disappears.
You mentioned her back falling apart. By the late 90s, the physical toll of her style of play was really starting to show.
It was all piling up. She had bone splinters in her feet. She had a congenital back condition, a misalignment of the spine that required her to wear a brace off the court. And in 1997, she underwent reconstructive knee surgery.
For a player whose entire game relied so much on that incredible movement, that footwork we talked about, knee surgery sounds like a career ender.
It almost was. She missed a huge chunk of 1997 and 1998. She lost her #1 ranking. And the game had moved on. A new generation had arrived. You had Martina Hingis, Lindsay Davenport, the Williams sisters were starting to emerge.
People probably thought she was dead.
Many people did. She was 29, 30 years old. In tennis years back then, that was practically geriatric. But then came the 1999 French Open.
Cinematic ending.
It really was something out of a movie. She hadn't won a Grand Slam in 3 years. She goes to Roland Garros, unseeded and underestimated. In the quarterfinals, she faces Lindsay Davenport, the world #2.
Davenport was a huge power hitter, big serve.
And Graf beats her.
Okay, so that's one giant slain.
Then, in the semifinals, she faces Monica Seles, the world #3, her old nemesis.
That's just poetic.
And she beats her. So in the final, she faces Martina Hingis, the undisputed world #1.
The trifecta.
She became the first player in the Open era, male or female, to defeat the top 3 ranked players in the world in the same Grand Slam tournament.
And that final against Hingis wasn't a walk in the park, was it?
Not at all. Hingis was 18 years old, she was brash, she was arrogant, and Graf was a set down. She was a breakdown in the second set. Hingis was basically serving for the match, but the crowd, the French crowd, completely turned on Hingis.
Why? What happened?
Hingis was arguing with the umpire. She even served underhand at one point out of frustration. It was seen as disrespectful. And the crowd started chanting, "Steffi, Steffi, Steffi."
Wow.
And Graf just rode that wave of energy. She clawed her way back into the match. She won in 3 sets. It was an unbelievable comeback.
That feels like the perfect mic drop moment for a career.
It was. She told the crowd right after the match that it would be her last French Open.
She did reach the Wimbledon final that year, too, right?
She did. She lost to Davenport. But the feeling was there. Her body was just done. In August of 1999, she announced her retirement. She was 30 years old and ranked #3 in the world.
And that quote she gave, I think it says everything. I have done everything I wanted to do in tennis. I was not having fun anymore.
It's so striking. She left on her own terms while still near the very top of the game. She didn't fade away into obscurity, losing first-round matches for years. She walked away while still holding the keys to the castle.
So the racket is hung up. What happens to the girl who trained in total isolation since she was 4 years old? Does she crumble without that structure?
Well, famously, her personal life took a very happy and very surprising turn. She began dating Andre Agassi right after that 1999 French Open win.
The most unexpected power couple in tennis history, maybe.
Definitely. I mean, you have Graf, the disciplined, quiet, intensely private German, and you have Agassi, the flashy, rebellious, denim short-wearing American showman. But it worked. Agassi wrote in his autobiography that he had been pursuing her for years. They got married in 2001.
And very privately, right?
Extremely. Only their mothers were present as witnesses. No press, no circus.
That fits her style perfectly.
Totally. They have 2 children, Jaden and Jazz, and interestingly, Agassi has said they do not push them toward tennis at all. They live in Las Vegas. Her mother and brother live there too. It really seems like she finally got that normal life she had to sacrifice as a teenager.
And she's still very active, just not on the pro tour.
Right. She founded Children for Tomorrow back in 1998, which is a charity that supports children who have been traumatized by war and crisis. She's really focused on philanthropy.
And she even changed her name slightly.
Yes. Since 2001, she has preferred to be called Stephanie rather than the diminutive Steffi, which feels like a sign of maturity, you know, separating the adult woman from the teenage phenomenon.
Though I hear she hasn't left racket sports entirely behind.
Laughs. No, not entirely. She and Agassi have taken up pickleball.
Can you imagine showing up to your local pickleball court for a pickup game and seeing Steffi Graf and Andre Agassi on the other side of the net?
I think I'd just forfeit immediately, apologize for wasting their time, and ask for a selfie.
Absolutely. So let's wrap this up with the big picture. When we look at all the stats, 22 majors, 107 titles, the Golden Slam, where does she sit in the pantheon of tennis greats?
It's the eternal debate, isn't it? The GOAT debate. Billie Jean King called her definitely the greatest. The Associated Press named her the greatest female player of the 20th century.
It's hard to argue with the versatility.
That's the clincher for me. Serena Williams has 23 majors to Graf's 22, an incredible achievement. But Graf is the only player to win every single major at least 4 times. That balance is unique. She didn't have a weak surface. She could beat you anywhere.
And the cultural impact can't be understated.
Huge. Along with Boris Becker, she essentially popularized tennis in Germany. She made it a national sport. She became a global ambassador for German precision and excellence.
Okay, let's unpack this one last time for the listener. If there is one thing they should take away from the story of Steffi Graf, what is it?
For me, it has to be the adaptability. She dominated in the 80s against legends like Evert and Navratilova using her incredible speed. She dominated in the 90s against Seles and Sanchez Vicario using overwhelming power. Then she beat the next generation, Hingis and Davenport, right at the end of her career using pure guile and experience. She constantly evolved her game from the topspin backhand to the slice to survive injuries and changing opponents. She was the ultimate survivor.
And she did it all with a level of grace and privacy that we just don't see anymore in sports.
Absolutely. She let the racket do all the talking.
I want to leave you with a provocative thought. We talked about the what if with Monica Seles, and it's easy to say Graf got lucky because of that horrible tragedy. But consider the inverse. Consider the mental fortitude it required to keep winning when your main rival is stabbed by one of your own fans and your father is being dragged to prison. Could any modern athlete maintain a world #1 status under that specific, crushing combination of guilt, shame, and pressure?
It's a very heavy burden, and she carried it while winning Wimbledon. It's almost unfathomable.
If you have a few minutes today, go to YouTube. Search for Steffi Graf 1988 French Open Final. Watch the footwork. Watch the Fräulein forehand in action. It is poetry in motion.
It is absolutely worth the watch.
Thanks for diving deep with us today. We'll see you on the next one.